Well, let's talk about the Labor review. I guess it's a bit like hearing the opposition's address, the coach's address to the players after a loss. So it's interesting to know for the next game you're going to play them. What did you make of today's review?
Well, look, the one thing you have to know about reviews, it's a golden rule, it's a cast iron rule, is that they protect the guilty and frame and punish the innocent. It's actually a very good political document because it doesn't say why Labor lost. It gives all these reasons. It's very clever political language. I've seen 1,000 of these reviews over the last 40 years. Weatherall and Emerson and the four others cannot come out and say why Labor lost. Now, we all know why Labor lost. As Scott Morrison correctly said, they had extremist tax policies on negative gearing, on franking credits, on capital gains taxes. It was an anti-aspirational agenda, and that scared voters. The second reason they lost was that they had an anti-aspirational dual-edged, fork-tongued policy in relation to Adani, whereas they told people in inner city Melbourne and Sydney we're against Adani and went up to Queensland and WA and said, no, don't worry, we're with you. Now, the electorate are not mugs. They are the reasons Labor lost. But if you read a summary of the review in the newspaper, it says this. Mr. Weatherall said Mr. Shorten's unpopularity was one of three key reasons Labor lost the election, along with a weak strategy. What does that mean, a weak strategy? And the failure to adopt your new leader. Well, no one came to me and said, oh, Labor's strategy is weak, or they failed to adopt from Malcolm to Scott, or that. What they did say, though, Tom, was people hated the tax policies.
It does mention too many policies. It does as well go to saying that there was a stress on a need to raise money, as in increase taxes, because of all these policies. Who are the guilty being protected, in your view?
The guilty being protected are the tax policies. But you see, if Weatherall and Emerson come out and say, we lost because of these extreme tax policies where we fought an election on the Liberal Party's #1 brand equity, which is economic and tax management, which is our core strength. Labor came to our front turf and fought an election on massively higher taxes, hundreds of billions of dollars of taxes on people. Now, you can say that, which is the truth. The next question is, well, therefore, are you dumping all those policies? If they cost the election, are you dumping all those policies? And Labor cannot say they're dumping those policies. No Labor person has actually said dump all those policies. You read all the commentaries from the left and the right.
Well, not all of them, but they're looking at them all, right? You can figure out.
That's right.
Each policy in isolation, you can't say cost them the election. It's possible to keep some.
Collectively, Tom, those policies cost them the election, but they can't say that because, as I said, then they have to have a shadow cabinet meeting and dump those policies. One of the reasons we lost in 2007 was because of the work choice policy, rightly or wrongly. We reinstated the no disadvantage test, so it shouldn't have been lost on that issue, but it was. Labor, the unions, very cleverly exploited the issue. We dumped it straight after. They've still got these policies which cost them the election.
Stephen Conroy has joined us now. Stephen, your thoughts on all of this? Would you single out a policy or two that should be jettisoned straight away in the spirit of your colleague there, Michael Kroger?
Well, look, I mean, the first thing to do is, we always admire Michael. I mean, you just take everything Michael said, put it aside. He's irrelevant to this debate other than cheap point scoring on the side. I mean, Labor's gone through what I think is, frankly, a very realistic assessment. And Jay and Craig deserve a lot of credit. They've put a lot of thought into this. I think they've got a good mix in how they've described the flaws of the campaign, the fundamental one. And this is a genuine political flaw, is that there was a degree of overconfidence following the change of leadership, and what Labor didn't do was change its strategy to deal with the fact that Scott Morrison was a very different human being with very different background and characteristics, but Labor were trapped in the 2016 campaign mode, which was Malcolm Turnbull, merchant banker, doesn't care about the average working Australian. I mean, Peter Credland described it best, Mr. Harbourside Mansion, and that stuck. And Labor.
So it was branding, was it? Because
grave error.
There weren't a lot of new policies after Scott Morrison's time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. I'm
saying you saying they could have won all the policies they had?
That was a fundamental political error. No, I think
Right.
they're mixed, and I think I've seen Bill say this today, and I congratulate him on saying it. I mean, the decision around the pot of money that they raised from franking credits, and they spent it in a whole range of very, very worthy areas. But if they'd, as Bill has now admitted, had targeted tax cuts, instead of letting the Libs match their tax cuts in that last budget, if they had actually taken all of that extra money that they were raising and gave it back as tax cuts, which people were crying out for, the Liberals would not have been able to create the campaign on retirement taxes, because all that money would have been going back to people. And so I think that
so that's the thing, right? Because the franking dividend
flaw.
policy gave them money in the next term of Parliament. That was the theoretical
Absolutely.
argument, and that allowed them to have a bigger budget surplus. That was the wrong focus, was it? The bigger budget surplus, because that would have had to have gone.
No, they took all of that money and then they spend a lot more in health and education and childcare and those sorts of things, as well as still maintaining a stronger budget surplus. I mean, I think Chris was right to want to have a budget surplus, whereas this mob weren't promising anything like what Chris had the ability to do, but we had a choice, the surplus and all the health and education and childcare. Whereas if they'd taken all that extra money from that side, the spending side, rather than the surplus side, they could have put it into a really substantial tax cut. And then Labor would have gone to an election campaign with substantially bigger tax cut promises than the Liberals. But, and if I have a criticism of myself and all of my former colleagues, I have to put myself in this category as well, is that we spend too much time focused on issues that the Australian public aren't as focused on in a federal election campaign. I mean, health and education, we always win, but that's fundamentally state government responsibilities. And what are the priorities that Australians see coming from a federal government? It's national security. It's running the budget. It's ensuring that we build national infrastructure. If you look at how Kevin Rudd ran the election, he said, I'm more fiscally conservative than John Howard. I'm going to give you a guaranteed rock-solid position on national security, and I'm going to build some national infrastructure. Those are Kevin Rudd's messages going into the 2007 election.